All right, folks, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much again for those who have just joined us. Thank you so much for spending what could be your first hour here at MAGFest with me, with my panel. I've done a couple of these panels over the last couple of years. I think this is the most I've had at one of my panels, so thank you so much. My name is Rennis, also affectionately known to my friends as the Bomb Cyclone. There's a story there. If you want it, I'll give it after the panel. And this is my panel, Board Games by Genre. Finding games that you want to play based on your aesthetic. This is also my annual reminder that I am terrible at making PowerPoints. So, what are we going to be doing in this panel? The goal is to go over 7 of the most popular themes, genres, and hopefully find a game that you want to play or give you an idea of where to start. I am not saying that these are the 4 games that you should play. I'm not saying these are the only 4 games. I'm not saying these are the 4 best games in the genre. There's 100 different genres. There's 1,000+ games for each micro genre. I do not have time for that. I could talk the entire MAGFest and still someone would be like, you left out this game. So, I'm always open for suggestions. What I will be doing is going through these 7 genres: horror, Old West, war, sci-fi, detective mystery, post-apocalyptic, and zombie, because those kind of overlap a lot, and fantasy. I'm going to give you 3 board games and 1 RPG. D&D will not be on this. I try to give you, thank you. I'm trying to give you some, especially when it comes to the RPGs, games that you might not have heard of or might not have played. So we are going to start with horror. This is my favorite genre of board game because it is so hard to get right. These are my 4 recommendations if you've never played a horror board game. Firstly, Betrayal at House on the Hill is a semi-co-op board game that draws inspiration from very classic horror movies. It is a light medium board game, so it has a very good entry level. It's pretty easy. It's exploration. The only caveat is about halfway through the game, 1 or more people become the traitor, and then they get a different set of rules. That can be a little difficult navigating the first time. If it's your first time playing the game, it can seem overwhelming. Do what the book says. The first edition, and even the second edition, has a lot of errors that you're just going to have to house rule. There's also a really cool Betrayal at Baldur's Gate that's a D&D theme, and there's also a Scooby-Doo Haunted Mansion version that is awesome. If you like video games like Phasmophobia or Until Dawn, this is for you. Or Cabin in the Woods, the movie, this is for you. Fury of Dracula, it is one of my favorite games. I love the story of Dracula. I've done plays about it. I've read books, tons and tons of stuff. This is your medium-heavy game. This is a 1 versus all game. There's a hidden movement. If you've ever played Letters from Whitechapel, this game is Letters from Whitechapel with a lot more rules and a lot more ways to win and lose. You are playing through, essentially, the book. You are either the vampire hunters or Dracula, and you are hunting Dracula across you're hunting him across kind of the continent. Dracula's movements are hidden. You can battle him. You can leave traps for it's a lot of fun. If you like the movie Van Helsing, this is for you. If you don't like the movie Van Helsing, I'm sorry. I love that movie. It's not good, but it's entertaining. I think the Night Cage might be the single best horror board game when it comes to making you feel that level of dread and suspense. It is a cooperative game. The board is ever changing. I love this game. If you play this in a dimly lit room, you will feel the suspense. Essentially, you are trying to get out of the underworld. You don't know how you got there, and you can only flip 1 tile at a time. But you have to find 4 keys. It is a cooperative game, and you go through a tower of tiles. Once the tower is out, you lose. If you cannot make it back to the central location, you lose. I have very rarely won this game, but man, is it just good at getting that horror movie feeling. That's the biggest thing I think is hard in board games when it comes to the horror genre, is not a lot of them do a very good job of really making you feel the horror and suspense. This one does it perfectly. For my RPG pick, this is Dread. Narrative-driven, Really easy, really easy intro role-playing game. It uses a Jenga tower as its main mechanic. So at the beginning, if your GM wants you to make a skill check, you are going to have to pull a brick out of the Jenga tower, put it on top. Okay? As the story progresses, the Jenga tower becomes more and more unstable. The decisions you have to make have more weight to them. Once it topples, your character dies. And then it sets up, and you keep playing. Usually the DM has a stopping point. You can play it if you have a good enough DM who's had a lot of experience, can just keep rolling with the punches until you're all dead. Seen it happen. Next, this is probably my second favorite genre, Old West games. This is the genre that I probably own the most board games in. Number one, Western Legends. It is the sandbox game. It is Red Dead Redemption, the board game. It as close as you can get to it. You can hurdle cattle. You can steal those cattle. You can rob a train. You can play poker. You can be a good guy, a bad guy, kind of just a townsperson. You can go rob a bank. You can have shootouts. There's a lot to it, so it is kind of a medium, moderate weight game. There's a lot of rules, but once you understand that you can kind of do anything, and there's a ton of expansions for this too that will open it up even further. I love this game. As an experience, it is awesome. Let's see. Great Western Trail. Oh, it didn't copy. Awesome. I'll just make it up. Whatever. Great Western Trail. This is one of the heaviest games I have on this list. It is difficult. It is a deck building game where it is resource management. If you like Euro games, Great Western Trail is for you. It is very good. It is very heavy. If you like things like video games like Railroad Tycoon, this kind of has some of those elements. If you like movies like Open Range, that is this one. You are getting cattle from A to B and dealing with all the stuff that has to be in the middle. Flick 'em Up. This is probably one of the easiest games on my list. This is a dexterity game where you set up a town with these awesome miniatures, and you flick bullets at each other. It is an Old West style shootout. If you ever buy a version, track down the wooden version. The Zmon made a plastic version that is much more accessible, a little bit cheaper. It's not the same. It's just not the same experience. If you can, track down the wooden one. It has 2 expansions where you get to play as Native Americans. There's ones where you have horses. And there's a ton of different scenarios. You can make up your own. It has a ton of replayability to it. If you like the movie Rango, Lone Ranger, this is for you. It is not a whole lot of rules, but it's just the fun of it on a table. If you ever go to Gen Con or Origins, they will sometimes bring out the life-size version of it, which comes with cowboy hats, and you're pushing them across at each other. I've not done that. I've seen it. It's awesome. The RPG pick for this one would be Deadlands. It's kind of medium, moderate, heavy. I like about Deadlands, it's not just straight Old West. I'm also a big fan of like weird fiction, and this has some of the supernatural weird fiction elements in it. I believe Geek and Sundry did a 5-part miniseries using this system, and I really liked it. It has the aliens, it's got mysticism, it's got all that stuff. If you like Jonah Hex, think Jonah Hex. If you've played Red Dead Redemption, the Undead Nightmare setting, the add-on to that, think that when you're playing this game. Next, war games. War games can be super finicky. Old school war gamers can be super finicky. You laugh because you know it's true. If you want to play a board game with an old school war gamer, Root is the one for you. It is a asymmetrical game for people who love war games and people who don't play war games. It is heavy.
The vagabond belongs on a cross.
Yeah. And
Remove him.
I love the Vagabond. It can get heavy, especially when you start adding in, you flip over the map, when you add in the different, don't do yourself a favor, do not buy any of the expansions. If you go out, you have this game, buy this game, do not buy any of the expansions until you have personally played and understand all of the different factions, because they all have different win scenarios, they all have completely different ways of moving, they all have and the artwork for this game is gorgeous. It is a woodlands, like woodland creatures fighting for territory in the forest. It's adorable, but it's a beautiful game too, as far as like when you open the box. The experience you get from that is awesome. Think Watership Down, okay? That is this game. Blood Rage. I love Blood Rage as well. This is kind of a moderate to medium. I think this one actually, it's classified as kind of a medium to moderate game. I think it skews closer to not easy, but there's not a whole lot you have to master. You can master it, but there's a set of rules that if you understand that, you can play Blood Rage. You may not win all the time, but you can play it. It's drafting, area control as well. Anyone who is a fan of like Norse mythology, you are trying to, like, when your Vikings die, they ascend, and you, like, it does something completely different to the game. They go to Ragnarok. It's happening around you. It's a lot of fun. It's also very brutal. So it's kind of that. It's a very good war game without being a war game, in my opinion. Lord of the Ring. This is going to be the first Lord of the Rings board game on here because I love Lord of the Rings, and there's not a lot of Lord of the Rings games, but the ones that there are typically end up being very good. War of the Ring is an old school war game. You are moving pieces. You are not measuring out, but you are moving troops, firing. It is that strategic. If you've ever seen, I think they have it here this year. If you ever see those guys with tape measures and it looks like they're fighting like in 1776, that is kind of this, but with Tolkien slapped on it and like way less rules. This is a difficult game, full disclosure, but it is awesome as an experience. I love it. You are you're either the Fellowship or the bad guys, and you're kind of playing through the movie-ish, but you can change things, and it's awesome. If you like The Lord of the Rings, obviously you're going to love this. My RPG for this is Night Witches. Has anyone heard of Night Witches? Fantastic. A couple people. I love Night Witches. This is the first instance of a Jason Morningstar you're going to see on my list. Jason Morningstar wrote this. It portrays Soviet women flying outdated planes and dropping bombs. But there's so much more to it. You are dealing with, this is based on a true story of the Night Witches in Russia in World War I. Thank you, too. They were flying outdated planes, and what they would have to do is they would have to fly so high up, turn off their engines, and swoop down to go under the radar. And the sound of the engine turning off and flying through the air, they thought they were the people below thought they were witches, and they were dropping bombs completely below the radar. You deal with very real world issues that women dealt with, and still deal with, but specifically in World War II. You deal with a lot of different, like, socio-political, economic stuff as well. This is fantastic. You can play it in one session. You can play it in multiple sessions. I absolutely love Night Witches. Sci-fi. So I'm going to put on Twilight Imperium 4th edition. I've only played, full disclosure, Twilight Imperium 3rd edition. 4th edition does streamline some stuff quite a bit. It is the granddaddy of all space games. 4 people, two of us who had never played it. It took us 8 hours to play one session. You are dealing with combat. You are dealing with trades. You are dealing with those scenes in all of our favorite Star Wars movies, the Galactic Trade Organizations. That was sarcasm. Those are awful. You have to deal with that trade, and there are 1,000 different ways to win. I put 4th edition on here because it does streamline it. There's a lot of pieces on this in this game. If you decide you want to buy it, I forewarn you, make sure it fits on your table. I had to build a over COVID, my project was I built my own gaming table. I specifically measured it out to make sure that all 6 players could put all of their pieces and the board on this table. It is massive. If you add, so you can play up to 6. The rule of thumb is anytime you add another player who has never played before, you're adding 2 hours to your play time. That is not a joke.
They have an 8-player expansion now.
Yes.
That's a good idea. I don't know.
Listen, if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, do you want to play Twilight Imperium 4th edition? It's gonna take you 12 hours." I will play every time. I have only played this game maybe 3 or 4 times because it is that much of a commitment. If you like video games like Stellaris or Endless Space 2 or movies like Dune, and of course some Star Wars, this is a great game for you. Terraforming Mars is also, so one thing I as I was making this list and going through my games and other games, sci-fi games tend to skew a little bit more difficult, medium, or high difficulty. You can find the ones, but the theming is not as strong, in my opinion. So when it comes to sci-fi games, typically there's a lot of rules. Typically it's going to be a long time, but the trade-off is the experience. The experience in a lot of sci-fi games are fantastic. Terraforming Mars, you are going to create civilization, and you are terraforming Mars. It says it right there. This is a medium heavy. Also, I will say this before I forget. If you find any of these games on like an app, that is the best way to learn, in my opinion. I have learned a lot of these games by buying the app version of it because it does a really good job. I'm a slow reader. I'm very slow reader. So if I get a book, a tome in these board games, I'm not gonna understand it in an afternoon, a day, or it's gonna take me a week to read through this thing and really understand it. I have found personally, just accessibility and everything like that, buying the app, pay the $5 for the app or whatever it is, and learn it that way. That is how I learned Root. That is how I learned Terraforming Mars. And then also, you can take some of these games with you everywhere. Something very hot right now, Balatro. It's not a board game yet, but it's in that genre. I love Balatro. It's on my phone right now. But Terraforming Mars is a very, very good game. There are expansions for it as well. Think like if you like Interstellar or The Martian, if you like video games like Surviving Mars or Planet Base, there's a lot of long-term planning that also you have to think of in this game. This game is not one of those games where you're like, you can play a turn at a time. This is very much a chess match against 3 to 5 other people if you do the expansions from the get-go. This is another one that I always suggest, like first-time players, this is not a game that I would get and play with 4 other people, and none of us have ever played it before. That's the other thing. We've got a lot of board games here at MAGFest. If you can, find a group, find someone who knows the rules already or has played the game before. I know that sounds like duh, but it has helped me. There's not a lot of games that I play or own that I didn't first play with someone else. I have compulsively bought a lot of board games. But Project Elite. This is going to be the one that plays most like a video game out of my entire list. It very much plays kind of like a Gears of War. You are fighting wave after wave after wave of monsters. You're rolling a ton of dice. You're seeing what happens. You're seeing what moves, and it's all timed. You have a set time for each phase. So you do have. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of rolling. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of pieces getting moved and added and stopped. But this one is fairly easy to get into. Not a whole lot of rules. Roll the dice, do what it says. Sometimes you get some cards, sometimes you don't. There's also a lot of cool expansions for this as well. Different boards, different characters, different weapons, etc., etc. My RPG pick for this was Cyberpunk. There really, in my opinion, there's no better science fiction style RPG, especially because they just reprinted it a couple years ago. I love the video game now. I was one of the suckers who bought it day one. I bought an Xbox solely for this game, popped it in. I played for 6 hours. I was like, oh. If you haven't played it, now is the time. They've done a ton of work to it. But Cyberpunk Red is the most recent edition, I believe. And it is just a blast. If you like the video game, play the role-playing game. If you like the role-playing game, play the video game. Detective Mystery. This is another one I think can get kind of... there's a lot in this genre, and a lot of them do something very similar. So I think sometimes it gets a little muddled in this genre specifically. My first one, oh no, my notes are out of order. Oh well, I'll figure it out. Detective City of Angels. This is LA Noire, the board game, like straight and simple. You can play it without. I believe you can play it without a GM or DM. I don't think it works as well. But basically, you are detectives trying to solve these crimes, and once you start to solve the crimes, the DM or GM can actually lie when you're doing the interrogation. They can lie if they want. There's certain rules and ramifications to it. They can lead you astray. They can drop fake clues, and it literally has you running all over like golden age Hollywood. It is LA Noire, the board game. It is a lot of fun. It's another one I would kind of put in the same classification as Western Legends, as far as like what you can do and where you can go. The map is huge. There's another one that will take up a ton of table space. Right. Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. This one has fallen out of favor as of late with a lot of board game like critics and circles and stuff. I still really like it. It is a one versus all. You are trying to. It is a much more of a social deduction party game as compared to Detective City of Angels. Where in Detective City of Angels, you are piecing together clues, and there's a ton of parts, and you're writing stuff down, and you have to take notes, and you have to interrogate people. Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, there's way less moving parts to it. This is a much more, not easy, but approachable detective mystery game than some. My notes are all out of order. Whatever. My Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. If you want to play an old school detective game where you feel like Sherlock Holmes, this is the one. You are looking at clues. You're going through the different like mysteries and stuff. It's also one of probably the oldest games I have on this list. It's very, unfortunately, I feel like it might be out of print. I can't remember if it is or out. I should have checked if these were even in print. That's on me. but this is very much as close. If you want to feel like Sherlock Holmes, it's everybody versus everybody. This is the game. Now, the RPG, this is my second Jason Morningstar, Fiasco. Has anyone played Fiasco? Awesome. Fiasco is probably my favorite DM-less role-playing game ever created. I have done panels here at MAGFest on Fiasco. This is one of the few games I will also suggest buying both the book version and the card version. Essentially, you are making your own Coen Brothers movie. There are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of licensed modules for it. I don't have all the rules here because if I start to talk about it, that's the only thing I'll talk about for the next 30 minutes. You are all going to make a lot of very big plans for your characters, and you're all going to see them probably blow up in your face. It is awesome. I've had some of the best experiences playing a role-playing game with this game. As an actor, this game became a part of how I process things on stage. That's how powerful this game was and how great this game is. 7, post-apocalyptic zombie games. I kind of just put these together because typically if you get one, you get the other. Zombicide Black Plague. There are 5 Zombicide themes now, I think. This is the best one. This is the most clear, concise rule book out of all of them. I have not played the Wild West one yet. I'm still trying to get my hands on the Wild West one yet. If they have it here at MAGFest, I will fight someone for the Wild West one. Because it was in Kickstarter, but it was like $350. And then I had to wait for 8 years or whatever. This is the best of them, though. This is the one where they start to fix a lot of the problems I had with the first edition of Zombicide. One of the rules that I hated was that, for example, was if you were in your square and you were shooting into 2 squares in front of you to a zombie, no matter what, if one of the other people playing was in the square in front of you, you were going to hit them, no matter what. I hated that rule. It was bad. They fixed it for Zombicide Black Plague. Zombicide Black Plague is also it's a medieval themed. It's gritty. It's a lot of fun. These games are also awesome for the miniatures and the table presence too. The Quiet Year is probably one of my. Has anyone played The Quiet Year? Yes. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. It is a map building game. You are kind of coming back from the apocalypse. We're using a deck of 52 cards, and each card does something different to the world around you or is an event. And you are literally drawing this out. So at the end of the game, you're left with like a something you can handle and see the story that was told. I love that. I also love the idea, I've seen people play this 1 card a week for an entire year. You can play it by yourself that way. So it does have that solo capability. 1 card a week. It's awesome. It is a very small, it's very hard. You can buy it specifically off the website for them. It's not very mass produced. I was lucky enough to get a copy at my home store. He's awesome and puts a lot of this stuff, like even just 1 copy of some of this stuff. Thunder Road, it is Mad Max the board game, essentially. It is high energy. It is high octane. You are fighting other cars. It's also kind of like Death Race 2000 a little bit, too, because you're also competing against, but there are helicopters that come in. Mad Max the board game. Unfortunately, I hope you like Fallout. If you don't, I'm sorry. This is one of the best role-playing games for this genre, in my opinion. Just because, and the reason it's on this list is because this list was made to hopefully kind of transition and bridge the gap between video gamers and board gamers. So that's why I've put a lot of these, and I'm giving suggestions about, like, this is your aesthetic. If you like these games and stuff, you could like these games. But Fallout, the RPG, it's fairly new. But it is a lot like Fallout 4. There's a lot of those locations, but they've added some of like the Fallout 3, Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas into it in different modules and such. So that is my post-apocalyptic and zombie. I'm also going to have plenty of time for questions, because I didn't realize it was going to take this little time. Fantasy. Lord of the Rings Duel is I think the newest game on my list. One of you is Gandalf, one of you is the Balrog, and you are going to fight it out. Let me see. This is another one. If you like Lord of the Rings, you're going to like this game. This game is getting a lot of, just an absolute ton of praise right now. This is one of the best games that they've come out with in the last couple of years. This game is awesome. It's easy. It's quick. It's theme heavy. For any Tolkien fan, obviously. This is a great two-player game. Two-player games can get. I appreciate a good two-player only game. There's a lot of games that you get that can be 2 to 4, but work. Most of them, I would say, work best with 3, or it's like if it's 2 to 5, it works best with 4. Or there's additional rules that, this is a 2 to 4 player game, but if you're playing with 2 people, you need to use this extra set of rules. If you're playing with 4 people, ignore these rules. Like, straight, simple, to the point, 2 people, battling it out. Gloomhaven. This might be the biggest game, I think, on this list. Gloomhaven was a friend of ours bought it. At 2020 MAGFest. He had never really heard of it, but just the enormity of it. I mean, this box, it's heavy. It's heavy. It's massive. There's a ton of stuff in it. You can play this solo or with friends. It is literally hundreds of hours. And there's a sequel. There's Frosthaven, and I think, I might be wrong on this, there's a third one coming out relatively soon, I thought. I saw that on Dice Tower. Tom Bassel of Dice Tower loves this game. This is one of his favorite games. If you're looking for if you're looking for a D&D style experience, but you don't have the patience, the people, the time to play D&D, I think this is your next best thing. Now, granted, the price tag on this ain't cheap. Usually runs about $200. Probably get it a little cheaper now that there's new editions and stuff out. But it is, I think it's well worth it. Talisman. This is a very, very, very easy, classic. Roll your dice, you draw the card, do what's on the card. This game can take 20 minutes or it can take 8 hours. You don't know. Just depending on how the cards come out, depending on what characters. The really cool thing is, like, if you have all the expansions there's a ton. There's like 10 expansions for this most recent one, if not. And then there's like mini expansion. There's a ton of material for this game. If you actually 2020. That was the first time I played this game, was in 2020. It was the last MAGFest before the pandemic. A friend of ours was fortunate enough to get a suite. So he was like, hey, do you want to come up and play Talisman? Sure. I kept dying over and over and over, and every time you die, you get a new character. I just wanted to play the ninja. Eventually, I did get the ninja. I did not win, but I was happy I got the ninja. This is also a really good app. If you are an app, like if you travel a lot, planes, trains, wherever, this is really easy to play on the phone. Play on the phone, I should say. Terraforming Mars, I would actually suggest play. There are some of these I would suggest playing on like an iPad, just because there's a lot of intricacy to it. This is one that's super easy. Roll the dice, pull a card, do what's on the card, move. Do you want to go? Can you go again? Yep. Do you want to go again? Yep. Easy. Burning Wheel. I found out about, this is my RPG pick here. There's a ton of different fantasy RPGs. I really like Burning Wheel. I found out about this one at a panel at MAGFest in 2019, I believe it was. It was like 50 games everybody should play. It's gritty, and it has an awesome mechanic. To get better at something, you must fail. Kind of like in real life. You know, like as children, we couldn't walk till we could crawl. Okay, we had to get good at, like, we failed walking until we were able to do it. We figured out what's wrong, and then we were able to walk. So, like, for instance, if you're in a sword fight and it's your first sword fight of the game, and you're fighting someone who's probably better than you, you're gonna lose. You're probably gonna lose. You're gonna be better next time, but you might have a broken arm now, and you need to go get that taken care of. So there are consequences to everything, but you are going to get better. I really like Burning Wheel. I think it does something very different than a lot of other RPGs. I really like the mechanic. It can be cards on the table. It can be very frustrating at first. Embrace it and go with it. If you have a good DM or GM, is a blast. That is the biggest thing. Play what interests you. These are just 7 genres that I think kind of encompass a lot. There's a lot of board games, video games, movies in these genres. I own hundreds of these board games. I've played thousands of board games. These are just the ones that I think can help bridge that gap between board gamers and video gamers. I think there's a lot of common ground, but unfortunately, I think there's a lot of tribalism that happens. It's like, board games, those are dumb. Or, like video games, I'm a board game. All that, like, no. There is a board game out there for everyone. And these are just 3 board games, 1 RPG for each, that I thought could help bridge that gap and get people into the hobby. Board games is one of my biggest hobbies. I don't pay enough attention to it with everything else I have going on, but I still love it, and we still have board game nights. I am now going to open up the floor for any questions that anyone might have. Thank you. Yes. How do you get my list? That's a great question. What I can do, I will put this in a Google Doc, and I will, you can always follow me on Facebook, Meta, whatever, Instagram. I use it for my businesses and stuff. I have to. Facebook, Meta, TikTok now that it's back for however it knows. My name is Rennis Carball. You're going to see a lot of my side business is I'm also a personal trainer. So you're going to see a lot of that. Don't let that fool you. I am a huge nerd. I have a panel in 2 weeks at Broadway Con on board games. So, like, that is, you can find me there, or yes. That's a good question. I feel like I made it all one lately, but I don't remember.
You're doing a great job of promoting yourself.
Thank you. I'm very bad at that. At Rennis Fit, RENNESFIT. That's my Instagram. On Facebook, I will probably, if you type in my first name, I could be the only one that pops up. If you need a last name, it's Carball, CARBAUGH. Yes, my Instagram is at Rennis Fit, or if you look up just Rennis D. Carball, that's me. RENNES. I am always open to conversations about board games, role-playing games, everything like that. I could talk, depending, given the topic, I could talk forever Okay. I'm gonna go all the way. I think I thought all the way in the back. I have not played Moonrakers. I really like legacy games as an idea. I think legacy games can be very hard to get right. There's a lot of good legacy games. I don't think there's a lot of great legacy games. Betrayal has a really cool legacy game. Kind of one of the big ones. Seafall is terrible. It's one of the first legacy games. Legacy games, you have to be okay with the fact that you're going to play it for 12 times and you're never going to play it again. It's just that experience. You are ripping up cards. You are putting stickers on cards. But every time you get a different box, let's say you want to play it again with a new group of people, or a new group of people invites you to play it, it's going to be a completely different experience. It's a very singular experience. I love legacy games. Unfortunately, I just don't have the people. You also have to make sure you have very consistent people who have 12 nights, because usually they are 12 nights to play this game. If you get three nights in, they're like, well, I can't make it this week. And then you never pick it up again, and it's going to drive you nuts. So make sure when buying a legacy game, you have the people lined up, and you all are on the same page about, okay. It's like, I'm an actor. It's like making a rehearsal schedule, for those who might know. Make a rehearsal schedule for your legacy game. Send it to everyone. If they're good with it, tell them that's what we're doing these nights. I saw a couple more hands. Yes, with the beard.
What's your approach to teaching maybe like a medium complexity game that you're really excited about? Maybe your friends or roommates or whoever, maybe like, because I've done a lot of games where it's like, I love Star Wars Rebellion.
Yes.
But it's not as heavy as you think, and it's a great theme because a lot of people like Star Wars.
It was on the short list.
There are a lot of finicky fantasy playable.
Yeah. So if you know your friends well enough, which I assume you do, find something that they can latch on to. Like if they, you know what I mean? Like if there's a certain element of the game that they could be more apt to take on, think of that as the gateway drug to the game. Also, do it in I tend to teach games in a comfortable environment, and I let them know going into this game, hey, I'm going to have to teach you this. I typically don't bamboozle my friends by like them coming over and be like, hey, got this new game, I'm going to teach you. And they're like, oh, I thought we were just going to play Catan. Set it up.
I may have accidentally done that with Jews before.
Oh, I've done that before too. I've learned. Yeah. Did you have a question, sir?
You talked about bridging the gap between video games and board games, and you mentioned terraforming Mars as like an app that you could explore.
Yes.
I tried to play the board game version of that with experienced players. I feel really self-conscious trying to learn all of those rules. Do you have any recommendations for like other apps? Like for instance, like I know there's a board game version of Wingspan, and then there's the app version, the phone version is great.
Yes.
Because I find that sometimes keeping track of all of the rules and all of the different phases of things is difficult. Do you have any recommendations for other apps you like?
Honestly, I'm a big fan of almost any board game that has an app version because, like I said, for me, I cannot read fast. I just can't. So I get these board games, I open up this book, and I'm there for hours, and I don't get to play, and then I don't get to play the game. There are better. I mean, there are obviously some apps are better, but if you can get one like Terraforming Mars, I think does a really good job of teaching. Root does a really good job. The app version does an incredible job about not letting you play. It teaches you one faction at a time and will not let you play the next faction until you understand the first faction. They are getting better and better. It seems like every year the app versions of board games are getting better and better at teaching those. And just kind of going along for the ride. You just know it's going to be a slog sometimes depending on what game it is. Yes.
As someone like interested in mystery games, but concerned with replayability,
Yes.
where like a lot of times the answer for that is you just shuffle the cards together and it's just nonsensical,
Right.
RNG, what. how do the games you recommend kind of deal with that?
So Deception Murder in Hong Kong is probably the best one at replayability because it is very much a shuffle, see what happens type game. City of Angels, the replayability comes from either being on the detective side or the GM side. Typically, the GM has played the module before. And they do make more modules for a lot of those games. And there are certain things in the rulebook that, like, you may not be able to play that module again as a detective, but you can run it. And you've got your own... it's almost like getting second game. Like, you just might have to be the GM for that. But you have your own rules, and you have your own things, and you can do things differently as the GM, but you know the answer for this module. They don't. Yes?
So a lot of things I actually had written on here were words you've now said. You mentioned tribalism, you mentioned gateway drugs.
Only way I know how.
Coming from a place of having two friends who have entire rooms for storing board games and then a separate dining table size room for playing those games back home, and a lot of friends who have recently got into the video game, board game, moving together into each other as time goes on space. Wingspan was mentioned, that one's huge. Just this year, just the past month,
Oh, yeah.
5 or 6 people I know have gotten.
And there's 2 sequels to that now?
Yeah.
Or is Wormspan and Fish... the Fish Span or whatever? Finspan? Finspan, thank you.
Slay the Spire got a board game recently.
Yes.
It's already it's already a card game, but Slay the Spire has gotten a lot of people woven into both.
Yes. And they're getting better at licensed board games from video games can be either very good or very bad.
And the Slay the Spire board game feels like Slay the Spire without being the video game.
It is one of the best IP crossovers
And
ever
it's
created.
important to put the big crate on your desk for any game that the final thing is Tabletop Simulator.
Yes.
Is the universal app.
Or just buy a tabletop. You can buy. That's the great thing. They do make tabletops that you can put on your table for board gaming that are the right. You can get different sizes and stuff. Or my suggestion, build one. You can find all sorts of people who have made their own. Go look them up on wherever, and because that's going to be the cheapest. Yeah, but like for my table, I took an old hobby table. And I took a bunch of one-by that I had from a set that I built. And I was like, I can do that. And just winged it, essentially. And it came out really nice. But like board gaming tables, yeah, sure, it doesn't have all the functionality of some of these board gaming tables, but I think board gaming tables are way too expensive for what they are. But because you're paying for a premium product, and there's not a lot of companies that make them. Try to build your own board gaming table once. Because then you can customize it. There are plans online. There are videos online. WikiHow is one of the greatest things. If you don't know how to do something, literally the internet will tell you. Yes?
I'm really into like deck building games, especially like drafting games.
Sure.
Like recommendations for newer drafting type games, like Seven Wonders.
Drafting, I'll be honest, I'm bad at deck builders. So I don't play a lot of deck builders. I get very, I'll tell you one of my favorites is the Resident Evil deck building game. I think it is not the first, because Dominion I think is considered the first. But Resident Evil, the deck building game came out very relatively soon after it. And it's really good. And it's got that kind of, it is Resident Evil, the video games, not the movies. If you can get your hands on it, you can probably find it aftermarket fairly cheap because it just wasn't as popular because it came out. Dominion was the thing. I mean, it still kind of is, but sure. I want to.
Any two-player like cooperative board games that you would strongly recommend, either on your list or off your list?
2-player cooperative. Let me look through my list. I have a list on my phone. All right. I'm a big fan. The one I should have put up here is the one genre I should have put up here is roll and write games. Now that I'm thinking about it, I really like roll and write games. It's something that's getting better and better. There's a roll and write for Twilight Imperium. There's Railroad Inc., which is they're usually you're playing against. I like them because you're playing against each other, but you've got your own single board, like. So, let's see. Pandemic, Fall of Rome, any Pandemic game. Those are all, and you can play those with two people. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. It is doable.
Can I add a suggestion?
Of course.
From the people who made Pandemic, they made a new game called Daybreak. It's also cooperative, and it's about climate change.
Oh, and something that's become popular over the last couple of years is like exit or escape room games. Those are great. I don't care what anyone says, especially the exit ones. Those are awesome as a little experience to do. Yeah, with your partner, with a group of and you can do them to The other thing with those roll and writes, my wife doesn't like to necessarily compete against each other on the same board. Because I'm very competitive and she's only kind of competitive, so it can get contentious, and that's what we don't want to do. That's why I like a lot of the roll and write games, because you're not messing with each other. You're just getting a set circumstances and doing what you can with it. Railroad Inc. is really good. Welcome to the Neighborhood is really good. I can see it in my head. It'll come to me. If you see me and it comes to me, I'll let you know. For deck builders, there's also a very funny, quirky one called Deck Builder, the Deck Builder, where you are building a deck off of your house as a deck building game. It's okay. It's not great. It's very meta, so I bought it and I played it. Meh. Yes.
That sometimes board games will go out of print,
Mm-hmm.
so they become a lot harder to find. In your experience, have you found that a lot of times they'll go back into print again, or some go away indefinitely?
Some do go away indefinitely, unfortunately. Your best bet at that point is eBay, or there are buy, sell, trade board game groups on Facebook that I am a part. I'm a part of two of them, and that's how I've gotten some of my Holy Grail games, the original Claustrophobia I couldn't find for a while. I found it on there, and those folks are usually pretty good on price. There's not a lot of price gouging on them because they know what they have. They're not trying to make a profit off, a huge profit. Now there are some that high it's high demand and very, very, very low supply. And those are going to get up there. But typically I have not had a bad experience on those sites or on those groups. They all pretty much know what they have. They know what they can give and take. So if you're ever looking for a game, I think that's the best place. Yeah. Yes.
If you're looking for a more condensed version of Gloomhaven, an easy one to get into is the Jostle.
Yes.
And that one, it's still long. We still have several sections out. But what I understand, it's a lot shorter. There's less interesting cards.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a much more manageable introduction to the Gloomhaven world. Any other questions? Yes.
So, I have a friend who will only play Wingspan and nothing else. That's kind of working with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recommendations for games I could try to bring in?
Is it just Wingspan?
That's all I've played so far.
You have one? Go ahead. Yeah.
I really enjoy Botany right now. It's about Victoria-style plants, trying to find plant specimens around the world.
Let me look through my list real quick. Oh, Parks is a new one, a newer one that's very much like that. Yeah, that I like that game. I've played it once or twice, and I really, really liked it. Oh, what's the Lao? Takedo or
About Wingspan. What's the draw?
I think it's just their first game, and it's not.
and that makes sense. Like I've been there. It's like the first time I played Catan. That's all I wanted to play, and I was like, and then I finally played another game. Oh, Suburbia and Calico would be my other two. Cats. Who done? All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy your MAGFest, guys. Everyone. Thank you.